Welcome to West Virginia Beer Roads, a podcast all about beer from a West Virginia perspective. I'm Erin McCoy, here with my podcast partner, Charles Backway.
Well, Erin, I guess you know that we're doing a first today.
I do. It's the first time we're interviewing a beer distributor representative on West Virginia Beer Roads.
Right. In the past, I've just wanted to focus on featuring our West Virginia brewers and the folks who make those businesses happen. And occasionally we've had retailers or maybe a beer festival organizer as our guests. But I think it's time to broaden our coverage of the West Virginia beer market to include others who play vital roles in keeping things moving. And for today's program, that's our beer distributors. We live in a strong three-tier state. And by that I mean our state law gives a very important role to beer distributors who make up the wholesale tier of the system.
So the beer brewers are Tier 1, the manufacturers. The beer distributors make up Tier 2, the wholesalers. And Tier 3 are all the beer retailers, such as bars, restaurants, grocery stores, convenience stores, etc.
Yes, and so there you have it, folks. Tiers 1, 2, and 3. And according to our state law, West Virginia-based brewers are the only type businesses that can operate in more than one tier. And we might get into that later or some other time in another podcast. But today we're here to focus on Tier 2, the wholesale level. That's where our beer distributors specialize. And we have as our guest one of the most active guys I've ever met in the beer distribution business. We're pleased to have on the program today Dakota Farmer from Johnson Brothers Mountain State Beverage. Dakota, welcome to West Virginia Beer Roads.
Thanks for having me today.
Dakota, before Erin and I begin firing questions your way, you're going to tell us about a beer you brought for us to sample.
Well, this is my favorite way to start an interview, with a beer. So today I brought New Trail Crisp Amber. So New Trail is a fairly new brewery to West Virginia, and this beer has actually not been released yet. This is something we'll start to see in the market this fall over the next few weeks. Really nice, crisp, hence the name Crisp Amber. But you do also get some of those nice toffee notes, some of those brown sugar notes, but it finishes super clean. So really looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be a great fall time drinker for everybody.
Well, let's crack them open here and start tasting these samples.
Let's do it.
So this Crisp Amber, is it in the same family as the regular Crisp Lager?
So it is, yeah. So this is basically a line extension of their Crisp family. I'm sure a lot of folks have seen the lager out in the market. It's become quite popular for us. Like I said, super excited to have a variant on this. We also have a lime version of the Crisp Lager as well. So they're kind of making this a little bit of a brand family.
Oh, I got it. So this is maybe like their kind of fall seasonal version of the Crisp.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. So what should we be tasting in an amber lager, you think?
Well, I mean, I think with most ambers, you're typically going to get, some of those toffee, brown sugary notes. Where this, was, a lager versus an ale, you get a little less of that sweetness, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't call it sweet at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah, this is more definitely, the lighter lager kind of flavors that without the sweetness particularly, although the balance is nice. And I do get some of that caramelly flavors.
Absolutely. I mean, I would liken it, there's another big amber lager made in Pennsylvania. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. So,
Oh, it wouldn't be from Yuengling, would it?
that would be the one, yeah.
Well, this has a very rich color
Yeah, it's beautiful beer.
and got a great head as it's poured out of cans that we have. And fantastic to have such a special treat since it's not on the market yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I know that the brewery's been around, New Trail, for a number of years. Maybe 7 or 8 or...
I think they're at 6 years.
6 years now? Okay,
Yep.
that's less than I even thought. But is this a fairly new beer for them again? Is this?
This is brand new.
So, it's not just brand new in West Virginia.
Right.
I got it. I misunderstood probably that. That's a beer that's in their whole market. I know they sell big time in Pennsylvania.
It's a huge brewery in Pennsylvania.
And, of course, I think they're in Maryland now, maybe New Jersey.
Maryland, New Jersey, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so this is I like this with New Trail Brewing. We're one of the first states beyond their home state to get this beer or to get any of their beers.
Yep, absolutely.
Exciting.
Yeah, they basically their format was they wanted to basically draw a circle that was 250 miles in diameter and expand there first.
Nice. Well, this is an easy to drink beer. I see that it's 5% ABV, so it's got a low ABV. It's very crisp and refreshing.
And will it fall into a similar category price-wise as
will.
the regular crisp?
It certainly will.
And that's
Yep.
been a very attractive price, especially for bars and restaurants that are wanting to sell a nice, clean lager.
Yep, and these will come in 15 packs too, so that's great for all your tailgating too.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'd say it'll be a success this fall.
I would agree with that. Well, Dakota, you work for one of the state's more active beer wholesalers when it comes to representing craft brewers and also West Virginia brewers. Maybe you could begin by explaining what a distributor actually does for a brewery and why they would want to use a distributor for their business.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think we are fortunate enough to have several West Virginia brands as well as regional and national craft breweries. Really, at the end of the day, the job for all of those, different breweries, regardless of size or location, is the same. We sell their beer, we deliver their beer, we market their beer, we promote their beer. So in essence, we kind of act in like a de facto representative of the brewery when they can't be there.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did you personally first get interested in selling beer as a career?
So I got interested in drinking beer first.
Yeah, most of us did.
Yeah, it's a good start.
Yeah, in Morgantown, that kind of seems to be the pattern. So, but no, I was in Morgantown, still in college, working at Kroger, finishing up school, and I had fallen in love with craft beer. I had a good buddy of mine who was really kind of leaps and bounds above where I was, and traded a lot of beers online, participated in a lot of those things, and I was exposed to it, fell in love with it, and one day an opportunity fell in my lap to apply for a job at a beer distributor.
Well, I think a lot of us know the name Mountain State Beverage as a beer distributor here in West Virginia because they pretty much cover the whole state. But Johnson Brothers is a name that maybe most people aren't real familiar with. So talk a little bit about the relationship with Johnson Brothers.
Yeah, so it's actually it's great. We started out as an independent, family-owned wholesaler. We've since merged with the Johnson Brothers out of Minnesota. What that's really done for us is it's given us a lot more technology. It's given us a lot more access to delivery vehicles, just all those great things that a beer distributor really needs to try to stay above or ahead of the curve.
Yeah, so like technology and things I know are a big deal in beer distribution anymore. And those are expensive technologies for small distributors to
Absolutely.
acquire.
Oh, yeah. And vehicles, like you said, that's got to be a major expense.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. Yeah. People complain about gas, but don't open a beer distributor.
Do you know how many states Johnson Brothers operate in?
I believe they're in 19 right now.
Oh, that's a huge footprint then. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it seems like in the past couple of years, you guys have added a bunch of new breweries to your business. What do you think is Mountain State Beverage's operational philosophy that's allowed it to be so successful in attracting breweries to sign up with you as their distributor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Charles just mentioned this a little bit ago. We do service the entirety of West Virginia, which is great. We touch all 55 counties, at least on a weekly basis. We've got a sales team of nearly 50 people out and about every single day. And we like to think that we're some of the most educated people out in the market. Our folks know about beer. They know about wine. And I think most of our customers, if you were to speak to them, would say, hey, my Mountain State guy, they really know quite a bit about beer.
Educated, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something we really kind of lean into. We try to provide the best service that we can all the time as well. When a brewery comes to a state, they want to be assured that, if they've put their time and money into getting placements in Walmart, that the distributor is actually going to get it delivered. So, I think we do a pretty good job at all of those things. So word spreads, there aren't a ton of beer distributors in West Virginia. So I'd like to think we're at the top of that short list.
Well, let's talk about in-state versus out-of-state brewers. Do you handle them differently?
I mean, not really. So when it comes down to the nuts and bolts, we handle everything the same as far as warehousing product. We keep all kegs refrigerated. Um, we make sure our sales team is educated on those products, regardless of where it's from. We have supplier performance managers, which is what I actually do. We communicate with our breweries and even our wineries, on very regular basis to make sure that we're meeting the goals that they, think that we can attain and that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, and do you have, I mean, I'm sure you do have regular sales meetings, but what percent of those meetings is probably more educational? Do you think that you're giving people or your sales staff product knowledge?
Sure, yeah. So this past year, we actually started doing monthly beer sales calls or general sales meetings. And the majority of those we've actually invited, guest brewers. We've had Dallas from High Ground on. We've had, the guys from Labatt on. So we try to make sure that we're, also giving our sales team a personal connection with the folks that are either making or representing the beer too.
Yeah, I'm sure that's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, when a brewer signs up with a distributor in West Virginia, it's required to be a lifetime, forever contract, which that relationship often gets its share of criticism, especially from smaller brewers, those who feel maybe trapped in lifetime contracts by much larger distributor businesses. Recently, however, we've seen some distributors allowing small brewers out of those lifetime franchise agreements without a whole lot of issue. But other distributors seem to hold fast to them. What's your opinion on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I know from a West Virginia brewery standpoint, especially, this can be a really hot button issue. Just being out in the market, not even necessarily talking about the suppliers that we carry. I've just heard a lot of folks voice complaints and concerns, and rightfully so. I mean, these folks have built their businesses. You know, I think there is some value in wanting to say that the relationship is going to last forever. Sometimes that longevity may make people compromise a little bit and come together and ultimately, hopefully, make a great relationship. But we know that that's not always the case. Just even in marriage,
Exactly.
But I think really at the end of the day, a little bit of flexibility would I think would be helpful. And I think really at the end of the day too that would probably be the best thing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about sales now and some of the different products you do represent. I know summer is typically the best season for beer sales because of the hot weather. People liking those good things like crisp lager, to pound down on those hot days. But I'm just curious. It's here. We're in latter part of August, and how are things going for Mountain State Beverage this summer?
Yeah, things are going pretty well. I mean, we're really in the thick of it now. Summer's almost over. Heck, we already have Oktoberfest and pumpkin beers out and about. So, they say it happens earlier every year. But yeah, I mean, summer's been great. Our July was very good to us. People out for the 4th of July, things like that. We were doing very, very well. In across all segments, really. Convenience stores, grocery stores, bars and restaurants were doing okay. So far, though, the year, I would say, has been a little bit rough across the board, and I think a lot of other distributors would probably say the same thing. I know talking to a lot of our supplier partners, they have similar insight too. The economy has created a little bit of an issue, I think, with sales, especially in certain segments.
Yeah, and I just wondered because you are. Mountain State Beverage is sort of a different kind of distributor in West Virginia, where in certain markets, anyway, some of our biggest markets, you don't really have the Bud Miller Coors product lines. You guys have you might have some other similar products, but you don't have the big sellers, the ones that, are so well known. But you do have a ton of craft. You really specialize a lot in craft. So I guess I kind of wondered, who's been moving beer for you guys? In West Virginia, are there certain craft lines that have done well for you?
Yeah, well, in the northern part of the state, we represent New Belgium. They've done very, very well. Their lineup with the Voodoo series, high alcohol singles, especially in convenience stores, those are doing very, very well.
So West Virginia's been on that wave nationally that's done well for New Belgium.
Absolutely. Well, and I think too, I think that does go back to the economic thing I was just talking about. I mean, you're looking at high alcohol at a very competitive price. So, I mean, there's a lot of perceived value in that, and I think that's really what's helped them. Additionally to New Belgium, all of our West Virginia breweries are up, which is great. And most of our regional breweries, from Ohio, Pennsylvania, they're doing very well too. National breweries, I think, across the board have taken a hit, but a lot of that follows suit with how the chains perform.
Since you do represent quite a few different breweries, a lot of smaller breweries, certainly in the craft sector, what does it take for one brewery to catch on, like its beer to catch on, while others kind of sit on the shelf? I mean, you see that happening. You mentioned a little bit about New Belgium's, high ABV lines.
Yeah, well, that's a tough question. I think it really, I think a lot of times it depends on the actual liquid in the package, and whether or not it was introduced at the right time. Years ago I was with Stone Brewing, and we released Buena Vista Salt and Lime Lager. We released that beer at the time of the Corona and Modelo shortages, so it stuck. And so that's an example of perfect timing.
Right.
I think marketing, POS, point of sale, all that stuff helps. Launch parties for new brands, getting involved, bringing brewers in to actually meet with the accounts and the consumers helps. Anything will kind of help fortify that.
Talk a little bit about some of the best-selling styles you're seeing, beer styles in West Virginia today among your craft.
Yeah, so I mean, IPA is still going to be king. What we're seeing though now is a really big uptick with craft lagers, craft pilsners. We talked about the New Trail Crisp. We talked about Stone Buena Vista. We've got Cinderland's Little Cinder. All kinds of great options really coming out, and I think that's really indicative too of the larger market than just even outside of West Virginia. The trend is showing that people want craft lagers.
Yeah, that's something that you didn't see 20 years ago in the craft lines.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
And I think too, maybe that speaks to the economy as well, because typically those breweries, or those beers, I should say, come out at a little bit lighter of a price point than an IPA or a stout.
Sure.
Well, on the other end of beers that are selling well, there must be some styles that you see that just really don't move that well in retail. Are there some what's West Virginia's experience in beer styles that don't sell so well?
Yeah, I would say some of the styles that we really seem to struggle with the most. Sometimes you'll get some of the heavier European beers, your Maybachs, things like that. They tend to get lost, I think. Style-wise, I mean, sours do well. I will say, though, that they have really taken a downturn. At one time we couldn't keep them in stock anywhere. We couldn't order them fast enough. But they've still, they've plateaued and maintained. Imports, obviously, I mean, are through the roof. That's something we see all the time as well. But individual styles, I mean, that's really a tough one, Charles. That really is a tough one.
Question there.
Yeah.
I mean.
All right, I'll let you off the hook there.
That's a tough one.
But all right, we're here at the end of summer, pretty much, like we said a minute ago, and fall's coming right up. Fall beers, not just the Oktoberfest, but there are a lot of different styles that start to pick up in fall. Could you talk a little bit about what you think will happen, or what you do know will happen?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's always the most exciting time, I think, for beer and for craft beer. It's my favorite time, really, as a beer drinker. I don't love pumpkin beer, but I do have a few of them every year. Got to give a shout out to Southern Tier Pumpkin, the king of pumpkin beer.
Now that is the king.
It sure is. But yeah, I mean, I think the retailers get excited about it too. I mean, it's obviously the sign of the changing season, the changing weather. people just want to, I think, cozy up a little bit, get a little bit of booze in them, and just kind of enjoy a nice beverage. You also have football, which goes hand in hand with the fall too, and that really sees a really big swing in beer sales. So,
Well, let me just interject here. You mentioned football. You guys have a beer from one of your suppliers, which I'll let you talk about, that's connected to Marshall University sports.
yeah, we sure do. So we've got Country Boy that we sell, oddly enough, in the northern part of the state. So unfortunately, we do not sell Herd Country Lager in Cabell County, but we do carry the beer, and it holds its own towards Morgantown. But yeah, so on that topic too, we also have Big Timber's Country Roads Trust Lager as well.
Oh yeah, no, that is another big seller for them, I know, and I assume in your districts or regions that it's also a good seller
Yeah,
for you.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
Football season coming up, I think a lot of people will be looking for those Country Roads Trust and the Herd lagers to drink on game day, if not other times.
Yep, absolutely.
Maybe that new crisp lager that we sampled
Hey,
earlier as well.
that'll be a great one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do have a nice selection of beer, this year going into Jones C. Edwards Stadium, which we're super excited about. And then, we'll be continuing our partnership with WVU Sports too. So super exciting time to be selling beer.
Well, talking about beer style trends, do you see these style preferences varying much from section to section around the state in particular?
Not tremendously. I think the areas, obviously Charleston, Huntington, Morgantown, they're a little more, I would say, knowledgeable. Maybe I don't want to offend anybody by saying that, but I think you can be a little more experimental in what you maybe offer a customer or what a brewer would choose to brew. But yeah, I mean, across the board, it's really a lot of what we do is IPA and lager.
So Dakota, I think it's time for beer number 2 that you brought for Aaron and I to sample today, and let you take that away. And while we pour the beer.
Oh yeah. So what Aaron's pouring for us right now, I think is going to be a nice little treat. We have Founder's Spicy Chocolate KBS. Ooh. So yeah, this is a big boy, 12% alcohol. So
yikes.
Yeah. So this is one, if you catch it on the shelves out there, would be worth picking up for fall. So
It's a good one to share at that ABV.
it absolutely is. Yeah. I brought plenty, but we'll go easy.
Yeah, and KBS, I'll let you tell the listeners what KBS stands for.
Yeah, so KBS is Kentucky Breakfast Stout. It's a beer that Founders has, made for quite some time now. And, a couple years ago, they started basically branching out and turning it, or making variants, I should say. And those variants started to flow into West Virginia, usually every several months.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beer we've looked for many years. The normal KBS, when it comes out, is always a treat for beer lovers and craft beer fans. I guess, do you know more about the ingredients at all? I mean, is that something?
Yeah, so with this beer, I think they use dried chili peppers with it. And they also, they're putting actual chocolate into the beer as well. So it's kind of nice. I always like that combination of chocolate and spicy.
Wow, it is a little spicy.
It really gets you in the back of the throat. Yeah.
Oh, it definitely does. No wonder
Yeah.
it's called spicy chocolate.
Yeah.
It is sweet, but not overly sweet.
Not overly sweet.
No.
It's balanced well.
I think the dark chocolate especially, that bitterness and then the spiciness from the chili pepper balances it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and
That's
these,
delicious.
I mean, in the past, from other brewers, I've seen these kinds of beers, and they're often called Mexican stouts.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And this is an imperial version of that, and with the peppers and the chocolate.
Yep.
Very
The dark
nice.
chocolate, yes, it is.
Very nice.
Very good. Thank you for
And
sharing.
what's neat, so if you run into these out in the wild, all the KBS beers hold up for quite some time too. So
Yeah, these are good cellar beers.
this is great.
Yeah,
keep
keep
it out
this
of
one.
light and keep it, relatively cool, and you can sit on this for several years.
Well, Dakota, you get around the state about as much as anyone I know in the beer business. So I'd call you a great maybe at least a good observer of the current state of affairs statewide in beer industry. Do you see any West Virginia beer laws, though, that might need to be enhanced that might help our beer industry grow?
Yeah, I think some of the roadblocks that we see really kind of comes at that retail level. What we're able to do as far as promotion, what we're able to provide an account that may be perceived added value. There's been a little bit of a loosening on some of those things over the last few years, but I still think we have a ways to go, especially compared to other states.
Other surrounding states.
Other surrounding states, even. Yeah. I mean, but everybody has their quirks too. I mean, I know in the state of Virginia, it's almost possible to use a beer coaster unless you have 50% of it, I believe, covered with, the anti or the drinking problem.
Law.
Yeah, kind of like the little advertising code.
Yeah, like the fatal alcohol syndrome, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. Every state has its quirk when it comes to laws, but we definitely have heard a lot about laws here. So interesting to hear your take on it.
Yeah.
As far as promotion.
Who in your organization, Dakota, is the one who does most of the relationships with the state alcohol regulators?
So that really is handled by Scott, our president.
Scott Parks?
Scott, yeah. Yep, he handles most of that. And then, at the corporate level, too, with Johnson Brothers, we also have, a corporate compliance folks as well.
Because as you probably are well versed in, they have added, or legislature has added so many different categories to the beverage laws, the alcohol beverage laws, and there's just new license things and this and that, and that's been hard for me to keep up with and knowing, okay, what license this guy has here. I'm seeing our beer people now getting these multifaceted licenses that are manufacturers' licenses that allow them to sell not only beer but wine and liquor at their place, where it used to be they were just a beer tap room. And these different categories, I don't know. I mean, that just seems like it takes specialists to keep up with that.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. And I mean, like I said, we're fortunate to have compliance folks, I think, at a corporate level. I know just talking to customers, it's difficult for them to keep up with. And kind of the way I look at it is it's like when your closet's full and you keep going to the store and buying shirts. At some point, you put a new shirt in, you have to take it out.
Right.
I mean, I feel like sometimes the legislation tries to solve problems and they don't eliminate the problem. They just provide a correction and it muddies the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you guys are quite different from most other distributors. Number one, you're statewide, but even in that, you have that one giant warehouse that you more or less service the whole state, not only in your beer lines, but your wines. How's that work for you within your distribution system?
Yeah, so I mean, it actually works out pretty well. We also have, in addition to the main warehouse in Summersville, we have 3 hubs. We've got one in Romney, one in Morgantown, and we had one in Poca. We recently moved to Charleston. So basically the way we operate, we use those as cross docks. So you order your product, it gets put on a truck to, it goes to the hub that is the closest to your area.
Regionally.
Picked up by a delivery driver, and then you receive it the next day.
Could you comment a little bit on that large warehouse? I mean, is there some automation going on there? Is there temperature control going on there?
Yeah, so there's temperature control, but there's very little automation.
People.
I'm sure we have some folks that wish there were some more. But yeah, we have a very, very large keg cooler, 90,000 square feet.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's impressive.
And we also store a lot of our craft package in that cooler as well, especially be careful with non-pasteurized items, things like that.
Sure.
That all stays in there. So,
well, a number of folks who've been observing that the craft beer industry nationally, anyway, they're saying it may have peaked. That craft is at the top of its game and maybe declining a little bit. How do you view the challenges facing our craft beer industry today?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of agree to a point. I think what's kind of nice for West Virginia is, in our business, we always joke that we're 5 years behind everybody else.
That's so true.
We definitely are.
So if that's the case, then we actually still have a little bit of runway and we can grow a little bit for a few years. But yeah, we've definitely seen some slowing. I would imagine most of our fellow distributors would say the same. There are some bright spots with certain brands, but people have changed their drinking tendencies. A lot of folks have moved away from beer, and especially high ABV craft beer in certain cases. We've seen a big spike in NA beer,
Oh,
which
really?
is that's been big. And for years, I always thought dry January wasn't real, and then this year, the sales show that it's real.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So and you've got things like the liquor-based RTDs that are stealing business. Just a list of different things. But it is becoming increasingly challenging. But what's nice to see is that we do have some of our larger national brands that are still doing well, and we still have all of our West Virginia and most of our regional breweries doing very well too.
Yeah, that's something I picked up on from your earlier comment, that all of your West Virginia breweries are still growing in sales.
Year to date.
That's so good to hear.
That is very good to hear.
So what, before we get off this subject, what is your non-alcoholic beer line that you guys sell?
Yeah, so we've got a few. So we have Bitburger Pilsner from Germany. We have their NA version called Drive. We also have Klosthaler, which is a great NA beer as well from Germany. 6-pack bottles. There's a hoppy version as well as an amber. And then we just recently launched Deschutes, from Bend, Oregon.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's give them a tiny commercial here, because that's a fantastic brewery line that's been around for many years in the craft sector that we haven't had before.
Yeah. No, we're super excited about it. And, they also brought with them, in addition to, fresh squeezed and Black Butte Porter, we also have NA versions of both of those beers as well.
Wow.
So it's nice, you see a lot of these others on the market, the Brewdog, Athletic.
Right, right.
Those beers sell well. I mean, you can talk to any retailer. They are moving well now. So it's nice to see another, great craft brewery bring in an NA version as well.
And more than one. That's
More than one, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
An NA porter.
Yeah, right.
That's great.
I've never had an NA porter.
Well, you'll be able to find them soon.
Exciting. Well, thoughts on brewers adding new tap rooms and opening new breweries here. What do you feel that the opportunities might be?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity, honestly. There's some untouched areas, I think, across the state. I think a brewery feels more genuine than just a tap room from a brewery, several hundred miles away, perhaps, That's not to say that it's not, couldn't be a phenomenal place to hang out. But I think, West Virginia still has some areas, pockets of population where we just really don't, not much has happened.
Yeah, right. As far as actual breweries.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, you feel like breweries...
I think absolutely. Yeah, I think we could absolutely have more breweries.
Yeah, I think so too, and I keep telling them that, and hopefully, it's been happening slowly but surely.
It has been.
It has, yeah.
But like you said earlier, I think you were right. We're a little behind the curve. Some other markets in America, they're oversaturated with breweries. There's
sure.
too many brew pubs in their towns. We don't really have a town that I could say is oversaturated yet.
No. I mean, even little Davis and Thomas. I mean, with small populations like that, I'm sure they could still sustain another one.
Dakota, what's your opinion on the beverage categories that compete with our craft brewers? I know a minute ago you did mention you had several different kinds of things, but let's talk, how do you see the competition with ciders, seltzers, NAs, things like that?
Yeah, so I'll start with ciders. We sell quite a bit of cider. That's a big part of our business. We liken it to craft beer. We go to market with it like craft beer. We sell Swill Dog, which is made here in West Virginia. We've got Bold Rock, made just right across the state line in Virginia. And we kind of go to market with those and treat it like craft beer. Seltzer wise, obviously, going back to what I was saying earlier with RTDs and alternative drinks and beverages, I think it definitely does take away some of the business from craft beer. And I think a lot of that, though, is nothing against the brewers and nothing against the beer itself, but it's the fact that the consumer is looking for something maybe sometimes it's lower in calorie, a little more crushable sometimes. I love this KBS we're drinking, but you can drink a lot of White Claws a lot faster, so depending on your objective, like,
That's fair. I have wondered about that in particular. The seltzers were such a thing for a minute. Do you feel like that's, continued? Is it
yeah.
still sustained as it was at the same level?
Yeah, so we do represent Mark Anthony brands, the northern part of the state, and our White Claw sales are up.
So as far as consumption,
No
really?
kidding, yeah.
White Claw
That
sales are
surprises
up.
me.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
might be the only state. No, I'm not.
I mean, they're not through the roof up, but
Yeah.
I would like them to be a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely still hanging on.
That's a little surprising from my standpoint, but
And also, you mentioned RTDs, which is a spirits
Yeah,
drink.
ready to drink.
Ready to drink spirits products. Which do you guys rep any of those in any part of your business?
So we do spirits brokerage,
Right, yeah.
which means we represent it, but we don't physically sell it or deliver it.
Right. I know that business well. I used to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, just talk a little bit about what you do have in that category. What you guys do represent.
Yeah, so we have the Cutwater cocktails, if you've seen those. We have all the Jack Daniel's pre-mixed cans, which it's a great addition to have. Sunny D.
Oh, that too.
Yeah, and then with our relationship with Mark Anthony, there's also White Claw that's vodka based
Okay.
instead of malt based.
And I haven't even seen that.
I haven't either or heard of it.
Not that I've been out looking for it.
I know.
But,
Yeah.
Interesting.
And there may be some others, so I don't
Sure.
run our spirits division, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I understand. I understand, and that's I think something listeners need to understand that there's that divisions between certainly the spirits and the wines and the beers. I mean, they're in different laws and they're in different categories and there's different rules on them, and you have to represent them certainly in different ways if you're a business. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Dakota, talk to us a little bit about breweries that impress you. Who is currently doing an outstanding job and why?
Oh gosh, well, I really have to kind of give a shout out to a few of our West Virginia breweries. Our big three, Bridge Brew, Screech Owl, and High Ground. They impressed me for a bunch of various reasons. I think some of the innovation that Dallas has done up in Terre Haute has been amazing. I think Bridge Brew kind of breaking out of their shell a little bit here lately and rolling out this Julie's Juicer Hazy IPA.
That is so good to see.
Yeah.
They fought that
Yeah.
hazy IPA forever, and now they made their first one, and I'm loving it. I've certainly tried it and enjoyed it.
Well, we'll be picking it up shortly. So
Looking
super
forward to
excited
that.
about that.
Yeah.
And then our guys up in Cuzzert, right outside of Brewston Mills and Screech Owl, man, they hit the streets hard with these festivals, and they're always bringing something new and exciting to the table too. So big shout out to all those guys.
Well, that's exciting. From all your work in the industry through the years, are there any big lessons learned? Ones that maybe you didn't know when you first started selling beer?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I've learned a bunch of lessons. Some a little bit easier and some a little bit, tougher. But I think the biggest lesson I've learned, and I think a lot of folks that are in any type of sales would tell you this, is it's all relationship based. Maybe I shouldn't say all relationship based, but a big portion of it is. We've got great brands. We have great products. Awesome liquid in those packages. But if you don't have salespeople that people can connect to, that they can trust, that they, can ask a question to, maybe at midnight on a Friday night, you don't have much of a relationship. And I think you're going to have a hard time selling anything, regardless of how good it is.
That's fair. That sounds very accurate and relatable.
Yeah.
Well, what for you specifically? What are your favorite beer styles to drink?
Oh
And
gosh.
I have a follow up after that. But you
Okay.
personally,
Yeah.
what do you like to
So
drink?
I love sours. Typically when I go to a brewery out of town or something, first thing I do, I'll look and see what sours they have. I love a good goose, that may rip the enamel off your teeth. And I know Charles doesn't care for them as much, but the quick kettle sours sometimes I can really get down with too. So
His reputation precedes him.
yeah, I love sours, and I'm also quite a hophead too. West Coast IPA
Oh, yeah.
You know, like I mentioned, I think earlier, I did work for Stone for a bit, so you kind of have to love West Coast style IPAs.
Well, let's talk about your favorites to sell, which
Yeah.
I'm sure is clearly a different question than
Yeah.
what you like to drink.
Yeah, favorites to sell. I mean, you know, I think that's
Styles, obviously.
yeah, favorites. Sure. I think that really depends on the customer. I mean, you know, I always want to sell somebody something that they need. So style wise, you know, when I was a sales rep, I would walk into a bar and I would look at their draft lineup, and they may have 6 lagers, 1 IPA, 3 sours. Well, I know that they need more IPA. So I would say my favorite style to sell is whatever the person needs or they'll buy.
Sure. That's fair.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And
Yeah.
true salesman.
Yep.
Well, Dakota, we're going to wrap this little podcast up today. But before we get out of here, I want to make sure people knew where you're from. And I mean, I know you live in the Charleston area now,
Yep.
but aren't you from the Princeton area or at least southern West Virginia?
Yep. So, yeah, I grew up in Princeton. Then I wound up moving to Morgantown, lived up there for a number of years, went to school and got into the beer business, and then moved back to back south. And now I live in Charleston now and kind of based out of here. So I've been all around the state. I think at some point I've either sold, delivered, or worked a beer festival in all 55 counties.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it's been great talking with you as kind of our master of distribution and our first distributor rep on this West Virginia Beer Roads podcast.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful, and your knowledge has been great. I know our listeners are going to appreciate it. So thank you for sitting down with West Virginia Beer Roads.
Awesome. No, thank you guys so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
This brings us to the close of another podcast. Remember, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast host. Thank you for listening to West Virginia Beer Roads.
West Virginia Beer Roads is a production of BrilliantStream.com.